Right, the stock market update. It helps me as much as it does you. Probably you a bit more, I would have thought. Right, let's get on with, first of all, looking as we always do, price earnings ratios. Again, we're cheap on Berkshire Hathaway, but like I said, any rises, my concern is, given historic patterns with Berkshire, would lead to a sell-off again. So I'm not getting into it even on a special situation. Energy stocks and banks looking cheap still. We'll touch upon that in just a second. Remember, with this, I'm not just going to be looking at the charts. I will be, in considering all the stocks that I'm giving you, they're bellwether stocks. They're not necessarily in my portfolio. We look at value, growth, income, cash flow, momentum, Sortino, which is risk reward, return, outperformance, all of those factors. And then on top of that, I look at which ones are big names, just to give you a flavor of the markets. Remember, this is a market update. And it's been a relatively strong week, somewhat unexpectedly, given that we'd had quite a few negative moves. But if you'd watched my updates, you'll know why it wasn't to be so unexpected by us. Because I said we might get a bit of a move up, but within a downward trend. I'm going to come to that in a second. The only sector which was not doing too well has been medical and diagnostics. Price earnings growth, again, everything expensive with the exception of Berkshire and some of the banks. Price earnings growth you want below 1 in order for it to suggest that the share price is undervalued compared to the growth in profits. Now, how are we doing so far this year? We're back at 38%. We peaked at 44%. That means some of the students, as I've said, within my Great Investments program, within the first 7 months of the year, unexpectedly, because it had been such a massive rally, were up about 100%. Those who were more heavily involved in S&P 500 stocks were up about 26% on their portfolios, roughly double the index, because they were cherry picking off the back of that. Now, if you got in after that, well, it raises the issue of what do you do when the market's falling and there's fewer opportunities? Well, what you do is you cherry pick and you wait a little bit longer, because I can't make the market move in your direction, all powerful though I am. There is a limit to how much my trillions can do to move the market. So we end up having to wait at times, and that's perfectly fine, because it's actually only 15 to 20 stocks you're looking for out of 10,000. So when we're cherry picking, there'll always be some opportunities based on our risk appetite. Now, how are we on the S&P 500? It is moving in a downward trend. It is no longer going in this upward move, okay? And as it's moving in a downward trend, it has become, therefore, that much more difficult to find good stocks. But again, we only need to find 15 to 20, so we don't need to worry about every single stock. And it is no longer a rising tide. You can see it's had a couple of weeks of upward moves. That is really shown in this weekly stochastic, where my hand is at the moment, which you should be able to see where my mouse is at the moment. And that weekly stochastic is what sort of gives the game away as to what might happen in the short term. Now, I've just done a video on YouTube about how I use these indicators, so you can have a look at that video in more detail. But I suspect that's what's going to happen. And it'll probably go to the upper boundary here, and everyone will get overly excited, but it is a bear market trap, as they say, unless it breaks out and continues going upwards. Now, since I am always relatively somewhat risk averse or risk neutral at best, I don't look to get in right now on the back of just that, of any new purchases, partly because you see the monthly stochastic is falling, the weekly is falling, and the monthly MACD is sideways at best, could easily fall below its own moving average as it did there. And that could signal, again, like we saw before, a bull market trap where it rises, a bear market trap where it rises, but it's a trap because it then falls more, because it brings in the buyers, so hence the trap. And a bear market trap because it's falling, bear, falling, bull, rising. Okay, so that's my concern at the moment, and I continue to hold what I've got and watch for now as a general principle. Let's go into some of these. Now, I've mentioned to you the FTSE already and my view on it. I am concerned that we could still get some falls. It seems to be a bit flatter this week because of these announcements on the on interest rates maybe not likely to rise in the near future, and this might be the end of the rising cycle, and that might have made people a little bit more optimistic, but I'm largely in US stocks in any event. So Apple I'd already discussed at some length on another video this week, and I did that other video because people had asked me, but let me just go into this in more detail. So the weekly suggests we could get some rises like with the S&P 500, but the monthly is falling. That means rises won't last for long. This is falling, which is negative, but if it falls below its own moving average, which is this line, then it'll be like this, and the falls will be more substantial, and therefore I'd probably look to that point get out. But for the moment, I'm just holding, and the weekly MACD is also falling, so I'm just holding. October does tend to be positive, however, so let's call that the Apple strategy. I've got it, I'm holding it. I'll wait to the next broadcast to make any other decisions. Okay, so for shorthand, we're going to call that the Apple strategy. And you know what this means. This is what the analysts think. If the price went from current to average in the next 12 months, they think you get 10%. Whereas I've just put that in for interest, not for action. Okay, so with Alphabet, similarly, the Apple strategy, these look slight concern there for the reasons I've mentioned. And that's overbought and suggests that could be the only way down. But I'm not expecting a drop yet, and we don't have enough evidence of it. So we just move on. It's the Apple strategy. I'm just holding for now. Okay. Microsoft, similarly, the Apple strategy, that is a little bit negative because that's falling. That's going sideways. That's falling, and this might rise. Now, of these, what's the most important? The monthly direction is the most important. It's flat. If it was falling, that would be more negative. If it was below its own moving average, it would be even more negative. But so for the moment, we've just got the Apple strategy, which is we're just holding. Okay. The next most important is the weekly MACD, and that's falling, so not so nice. The next most important is the monthly stochastic, and that's falling, so not so good. And the least important, and the only one which is bullish, is the weekly stochastic, which is rising. All right. So I'm trying to give you some education whilst I give you information at the same time on these. Amazon, still Apple strategy. Weekly is falling. That's flat. So we wait. That's the Apple strategy. Wait, am I buying more? No, that's the Apple strategy. We're not buying more. We're holding. Are we selling? No. So you've got buy, hold, or sell. We're on hold. That's what I'm calling the Apple strategy at the moment. Okay, just a shorthand. So I have to keep repeating myself for every single blasted stock. Disney still started moving up. It's good education for you here. Look, do you try and get in here and call the bottom? Some of you might. I think that's a high-risk strategy. It's not for me. I'm one of those who rather get in after a bit of a lag because then the odds are more in my favor. I'd rather the downward trend had broken. So for me, I'm not buying Disney. Okay, even though the analysts think 25% to the upside is possible. Nvidia, I've told you in many, many videos my strategy, which is if it drops 10%, you might sell 10 or 20%. If it drops 20%, you might sell 30 or 40%. Okay, but for the moment, just use the Apple strategy with this, and you can interpret this yourself. Slight worry. The biggest worry on this one is that MACD is overbought. Okay, and when that falls, you could have falls for a year like you did here. All right, I just want you to be aware of that that can happen. You sort of get this wonderful rally moving up and up, then it goes even higher, and then down for a year. And that isn't good, is it? Snakes and ladders, right? It's not good. All that hard work wasted, and you've gone back to where you were at the start in September 2020. That's Nvidia. Analysts that are positive. Well, what do they know about anything anyway? Tesla, nice upward trend. It was a special situation, so it didn't fit into my approved filtered list, which is very stringent, and it largely didn't because of the volatility. However, how does it look at the moment? Well, Apple strategy for that as well. Mixed signals, sideways. That's a useful term, isn't it? Mixed signals. We often hear it in other surroundings, but it applies equally to this. Meta, mixed signals. That's negative. That's positive, but the least important. Well, this is rising. The monthly is rising, which is good, but the weekly is falling. I mean, they're in opposite directions. And you sort of have to look at it around here. It tends to go sideways for a bit because it's got conflicting sums of money going in opposite directions. So that's your Meta right there. Service now, bit worrying, negative, bit positive, but least important. Falling is not good, and that's flattening. So it's probably going to go sideways for a bit, but Apple's strategy for this, I'm not selling it. I don't trade my investments. if I can avoid it. And I'm not buying more because I don't have enough reason to be totally buoyant, not even all of this, given the headwinds in the broader market, and not even that in October. It tends to have a very good month. Okay, I'd rather just hold at the moment. And Apple's strategy for this, for similar reasons I've already mentioned. And that's your lot. Have a look at my YouTube channel, my Telegram. Have a look at alpeshpatel.com/links. You'll learn lots there and lots of free information as well. Okay, slight political comment. I don't care what religion babies are. And I hope they're all safe, whatever their faith. And I bloody hate terrorists. I think I've said 2 sentences which every single person on here will agree with. Okay?